All right, so I'm gonna talk about two records, and then I'll give the order when I'm done. So my top two, like I said, most difficult decision I've made between two albums. I listened to these back to back while I was away in South Africa, probably easily 40, 50 times. And I inflicted it on Paige an awful lot as well, because I kept asking her opinion on stuff, and she's the least metal person on the face of the earth. So the two records in question. Greetings, Legion, and welcome to episode 210 of Into the Necrosphere. Before this episode is done, you will know what my favorite album was of 2023. I am joined by my fellow horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse, the host of Everything Went Black, the co-host of Necromaniacs, frontman for Tombs, Scorpion Throne and Begotten Suns, the great Sensei Mike, as we count down our top 10 favorite releases of the last 12 months, celebrating and capping off an absolutely phenomenal year. That is going to be coming your way very shortly. But before we get to that, we have our very first premiere of 2024. It comes at us by way of Brisbane, Australia. It features the great Dan Elkin in a progressive death metal project called Stellar Remains. They are about to drop a brand new EP called Wastelands through Gutter Prince Cabal. It comes out on February the 15th, and they very kindly are letting us share the very first single off of that record with you right now. This is a song called Obsolescence. You just listened to Obsolescence by Stellar Remains off the upcoming EP Wastelands. It will be available through Gutter Prince Cabal on February the 15th. Link to the Stellar Remains Bandcamp is in the description to the podcast if you want to head over there and pre-order. And of course, let them know who sent you if you do. Big thank you to Gutter Prince Cabal for letting me premiere that track on the show. I have heard the whole thing, so if you needed any further convincing to go and put in that pre-order, I can tell you right now the whole album or the whole EP is absolutely top-notch. If you are new to Into the Necrosphere and you like what you have heard so far, then make sure that you elbow drop the subscribe button on your platform of choice. Follow me on the socials. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and X. And if you really want to show your love and support to Into the Necrosphere, then head over to the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store, where you can pick yourself out a t-shirt or a hoodie or whatever else catches your fancy. And thanks, as always, to the folks that do support that Teespring store, because whatever money I make on that, I plow straight back into the show. Then some of you may be aware that I am a member of a clandestine cabal of men producing high-quality podcasting content week in and week out, and I speak, of course, of the Horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. Every Monday, we get your week started right as Brandon Legion brings you another installment of Horrorwolf 666. Every Tuesday, yours truly casts hexes and slays poses on Into the Necrosphere. Next week, my guest is going to be Derek Boyer of Suffocation, a hugely inspiring chat, and one that I urge you not to miss. On Wednesdays, this week's guest, Mike Hill, brings you another installment of Everything Went Black. He is back every Thursday with perhaps one of my favorite podcasts of the week, Necromaniacs. He is joined by his co-hosts, Sheriff Mike Scondado and Professor Jeff Kashid. They review old and new horror movies. This past week, they reviewed a 1993 film called Trauma. The podcast is always massively entertaining, very insightful, and like I said, a highlight of my podcasting week personally. On a Thursday and a Sunday, the sinister minister Carl Hikara takes you on a journey into the dark, the weird, the arcane, and esoteric. The podcast is Sol Knox, and this past Sunday, he had Simon of Cult Burial on the show. I have been due to get Simon on Into the Necrosphere at some point as well, so hopefully that's going to happen in the not-too-distant future. But in the meantime, Carl does phenomenal work week in and week out, so make sure you check out his show. And then, of course, the great Cheyenne of the band Trivax, unbound by any kind of routine or scheduling, drops an episode of Iblis Manifestations when you least expect it. He is also, incidentally, now offering personal training sessions online. You can check that out on Instagram at trialbyfire.fit. And if you're looking to add on some muscle, just generally get healthier, lose some weight, or whatever your needs are, Cheyenne is a man in the know. He has got some great success stories, including his own, and you can reach him through the trialbyfire.fit Instagram account and get something set up. When I am done counting down the best records of 2023 with Mike Hill, don't go anywhere, because I'm going to do a quick Cliff Notes summary of some of my favorite releases of the past weekend. 2024 definitely does not seem to be waiting on us to get started. 2023 I felt was a little slower to get going, but 2024 just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I think probably from the first week of January, there's just been a deluge of great stuff coming out, and this weekend certainly was no different. So we'll be talking about that, and then of course it's on to the weekly news rant. Many members of the Legion's favorite portion of the show. This week we've got new singles by Vredehammer, a new single by Bruce Dickinson, and many others to round up for Judgement. So stick around for that at the tail end of the podcast. For now, though, sit back and enjoy as I reveal my favorite album of 2023 alongside my guest this week, Sensei Mike Hill. Michael Hill, welcome back to Into the Necrosphere. As we were saying offline before I hit record, it has been way too long. You've obviously been getting up to all sorts of exciting stuff. First thing I just want to talk about very quickly, because you need to just confirm something so I know. When exactly is the 10th anniversary of Necromaniacs? It's somewhere in February, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I don't know the exact date though, but the real kicker about that 10th anniversary is we might have to have a deferred 10th anniversary episode because, as you probably know, I'm going to be away on tour for part of that month, and I wanted to get all three of us together and do something special. But we might actually celebrate our 10th anniversary in March.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I firstly, congratulations. But just also secondly, it must be insane to look back at it and think it's been 10 years. I mean, I sit and think sometimes I started into the Necrosphere in 2000 and I think it was 2018. 2018, 2019. But I mean, no, actually, it is 2019 because this year will be 5 years, and even that it just blows my mind. I can't believe how quickly time has passed.
Time flies, man. Just even that 10-year period, it seems like just yesterday that we started, or it seems like 2 months ago that we started the podcast. And I just look back at all the different places I lived and situations in my life that have come and gone since the beginning of that and now. And it's pretty humbling in a lot of ways when you think about it.
First ever movie you guys discussed was a Serbian film.
Technically, that was Everything Went Black 1, episode 1.
Oh,
And
really? Okay.
we hadn't even thought about doing a podcast together. And we went to see the movie, this place called the Alpine out in Brooklyn, and like a small, quiet neighborhood. They were playing like the Thor movie and things like that, and then Serbian film. And me and Mike went into the theater with another friend of ours, Jeff, a different Jeff, and there was like a couple sitting in front of us. And then, like, I don't know, like 20 minutes in, they just left. It was just literally us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was like, Mike, we should do this. We both love horror films. At the time, Mike had Brooklyn Monster Factory, the comic book shop happening.
Mm.
And it seemed like a natural thing. And it just kind of went from there. And now, only in the last few years has it been a weekly show. We used to just randomly do episodes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you guys are going from strength to strength, and this year there's a fair few things that are exciting that are coming up, or at least on the horizon. But the one thing that I was particularly pleased to hear is that after many years, you have finally gotten aboard the Curb Your Enthusiasm train.
Yes, yeah, man. I've always been aware of it, and sometimes like things, even though it takes place in LA for the most part, like Larry David's like a New York guy, and stuff that's like heavily New York influenced because of just living. You kind of, I don't know, I don't embrace it as much as some people, I guess, because of some hang up I have. I don't know, but I've been going hard, man. Like my girlfriend and I watched the entire series because the new seasons, the final season's kicking off soon.
Yeah, which is an absolute tragedy. But I mean, he's 76 years old, so you kind of at some point, I guess you need to give it up. But I mean, I was a Seinfeld obsessive, pretty much since. Yeah, I discovered Seinfeld probably when I was about 13 or 14 years old, and I became completely and utterly obsessed with it. And then when Curb came up, I had to watch that because I knew Larry David was in it. But over the years, I think Curb has probably usurped Seinfeld as my favorite, comedy show, and a chunk of that lies in two factors. Number one, the dynamic between Larry David and the Susie Green character, which I just think is one of the greatest comic pairings, only matched by potentially probably the greatest comic pairing ever committed to film, and that is Richard Lewis and Larry David. And I love those two guys together, and like the level of insult and rancor whenever they engage with each other, and yet they still remain friends. And it is just it's really sad that Richard Lewis actually in real life now has Parkinson's disease. You can see in the later seasons age is kind of catching up to him, but there's so much gold, like from the first episode where there's this exchange between them, and I think Richard says that he has till sundown to call him and apologize. And then all through the seasons there's always some highlight. Like my favorite one was the bit where Richard Lewis's pet bird dies, and Larry sends him the text and says, sorry to hear about your bird. The good news is I'm still alive. But the way Richard confronts him about that is just fucking brilliant.
Yeah, I've always been a big Richard Lewis fan, even back in the day when you hear him on Howard Stern and and all this sort of stuff. And yeah, that interaction between those two guys, it's like how my friends and I interact with each other. That's why I really have grown to love the show. And Susie Green reminds me of so many like older women, like mothers of girlfriends and things like that I've had in my life. And it's so interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely brilliant. And again, some decent shows this year. I've not started watching True Detective yet. I have heard your and Ralph's views on season 4. Like I said to you, and I'm stating this publicly so that it's a matter of record. If you ever want to do an episode entitled, maybe the case for and the case against season 2 of True Detective, or maybe making the case for season 2 of True Detective. After you guys did your season 1 on Everything Went Black, I immediately went back. I watched season 1, loved it as always. It's probably 7th or 8th time I've been through it, and then I thought, okay, let me just give season 2 another try. I'd watched it a couple of years ago and actually liked it a lot more than I did the first time I saw it. I think the first time I had recency bias when it came to season 1 because it was so different. But then, when I watched it again last year, I just thought it was fucking absolutely fantastic. For whatever reason, there's just so many things I seem to have missed the first couple of go rounds. And to me, I wouldn't. It still doesn't top season 1, but it's not far off, and it's significantly better than season 3. Season 4, I've not seen it. The only one thing I would say, it really pissed me off when Isa Lopez came out and said, the bad reviews that season 1 are getting is because of toxic hardcore fanboys of, season 4 are getting because of toxic hardcore fanboys of season 1. I thought, okay, people do kind of have a right to not like something without having to be called toxic and scum of the earth.
Well, right away, I was kind of put at odds because in the beginning of the first episode, there's a quote attributed to Hildred Castaigne, who is a character in Repairer of Reputations by Robert W. Chambers that is in The King in Yellow. But it's not a quote from that character. That's a made-up quote. It's a quote that she wrote, and she's attributing to a character. And part of me is like, you know what? Nick Pizzolatto, who wrote the first season, was someone who was deep into the whole Thomas Ligotti, H.P. Lovecraft, Carl Edward Wagner mythos. And even though he wasn't writing a Cthulhu mythos tale, it fit within the philosophy of that. And I don't feel like Isa Lopez really understands or has spent the time with that kind of source material to create an extension of that world, and it's like, okay, let's grab a couple of elements here, a couple of elements there, put it in like this place that's shrouded in darkness and just see what happens. And the jury's still out for me on season 4. So we'll see what happens.
Well, the other ominous sign for me, and I think over the years of listening to Necromaniacs, I think I've started to develop a real affinity for Sheriff Mike Scondato's tastes, because I think he and I seem to be quite simpatico when it comes to the kind of TV shows we like and stuff like that. He's very big on dialogue. I know you're very big on dialogue too. Yeah. Second, you guys said there's an issue with the dialogue. I thought to myself, the dialogue is kind of the magic of the show. Well, why would you fuck with that?
Well, even going back into the first season, there's so many. Even the peripheral characters are interesting. You know what I mean? And just the little quippy dialogue with like, between Matthew McConaughey and there are moments where there's like some really Baroque lines in there that harken back to like a Lovecraftian sort of thing. And I'm really down with that whole idea, where like, it's all one big ghetto and, just, I don't know, one big ghetto in outer space. There's no lines like that in the 4th season, and it's just very literal. And it seems like it's lacking this like fanciful sort of vibe to it, which really is a strike against it, in my opinion.
Yeah, it lacks in texture.
Yeah, there's no texture.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see when we hear it. One thing I am looking forward to, and I'd be stunned if I'm disappointed by this because of how much I liked X and Pearl, but Maxine, I cannot fucking wait for that to drop. And I think I sent you a message when I saw the article when they were starting to compare it to Giallo. I was like, wow, okay, now it's like stepping up even more, because they seem to kind of have incorporated the Night Stalker and all sorts of crazy shit from the 80s into this. And in the hands of Ty West, I mean, I don't think he's going to fuck that up. I think he's going to do an amazing job. And I have come to absolutely adore Mia Goth. I think in terms of like modern day scream queens, I mean, she is the apex.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And it makes sense to me that there would be a giallo element, knowing that, Ty West is a maestro when it comes to making this type of stuff. And, something, if he's going to incorporate elements like that, like an American doing that, I think it'd be great. And as you know, from listening to the Necromaniacs, Mike and I are quite fond of Italian horror movies and giallo and that sort of stuff.
The other thing I wanted to mention very quickly before we get started on our countdown, or just bring folks up to speed on some of your musical endeavors. I think, first of all, just to publicly congratulate you. I think this Profanatica tour it sounds fucking awesome. Great lineup, very exciting. I know there were some tours that, I don't know whether you want to talk about it or not, but I know there was a tour with a, band who may or may not be on some of our lists today, that didn't come off the ground. But the Profanatica got a lot of props for that last album that they brought out last year. There's a lot of interest in them. I think it's a great fit for you guys, and I was really, really pleased to see when that was announced.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And like for the first time in years, we don't have to drive all the way across the country to start a tour, which is really nice. It's starting right up in Providence, Rhode Island, which is several hours away from here. And the last several tours, U.S. tours, I feel like we've either had to fly out to start or drive from New Jersey to Albuquerque, New Mexico to start. So so this is nice that it's a local and it ends in New York, which is great.
Yeah.
And Nunslaughter, Profanatica, incredible. And that tour with that band is still being postponed. It's a different lineup. It probably is going to get kicked into next year, and who knows, so it's unfortunate.
Well, I know one of them has some legal wranglings anytime that they want to travel outside of Europe that I know can from time to time throw things into disarray. But I again, fingers crossed for you guys that happens, especially in view of their newer music. But I think the Profanatica tour is great. And then writing wise, you mentioned I think you mentioned it on Everything Went Black, but you kind of think Tomb's new record is going to be 2025.
Yeah, it's just the way the logistics are lining up. Right now, if we were to record right now, it probably still would be early 2025. Just how schedules are going, and we're not done writing. And I don't know, that it's a painful process writing. It's just not. I don't want to sound like some art fag or anything like that, but it's like, but I am. So it's like, I'll write 10 songs that sound almost identical, and I'll pull like pieces from each of them and make like one song out of it. You know what I mean? And like we're about, I would say 70% of the way there with the material, but there's those last few. It has to be exactly the way I want it to be, otherwise I'm going to not make the record. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And any other projects that you've got going on? You said you're going to do more work on Scorpion Throne as well.
That's going to come out because that's independently released. So both Scorpion Throne and Begotten Suns, there's new material in the wings for that. And once I finish writing the new Tombs and we have like at least the recording done, then I'll focus on that material, and that will, I'll get at any time immediately. So that's that'll be in the summertime this year.
Yeah. So that's kind of a segue into what we were going to talk about today. So the finale, and this is our third year in succession of doing this, but the finale of the top 30 of 2023. But let me just open by asking you, as a comment from you on what you saw in 2023, the quality of the music that came out in 2023, what was your take on the year?
I had up until minutes before you and I started this call, I was changing my list because there was just so many great releases, and there's even stuff that came out in the beginning of the year that I was like, man, this is like going to definitely be on my list, and then it's not even a mention. You know what I mean? Yeah. Not to say that it's not great, but it's been incredible, like leaps and bounds of progress just with just the overall creativity of bands and artists and specifically in extreme music. Like I listen to a lot of different stuff, but like this is my love. My focus is this type of music, and I just feel like it's not it's hit a new level of creative progress. I think that it's an open playing field now to incorporate influences from across the board, and I have so much respect for people making music right now, in the extreme music world, because they're not just limiting themselves to being a thrash band or a death metal band or black metal. I mean, I've always felt black metal was like more open as far as incorporating creative elements into it, but now it's just like it's really moved into a different realm of creative freedom, and that's the things that I really respect. Like I've never wanted to be involved in anything that was limiting, and I think the overarching community has adopted that sort of approach to making music, and it shows up in my top 10 list and all the other bands that I mentioned. And in no way am I saying this is like some definitive list. This is like what I listen to the most. You know what I mean?
It's on this podcast, so it is the definitive list. So, but it's yeah, dude, I completely agree with you. But I the reason I mentioned it was it's a nice segue. It was something I thought about this morning. Like as an artist, as somebody putting out music in this genre, in the space. Does it ever create like a degree of pressure or a degree of maybe competition challenge when you look at what's coming out and you need to put out something yourself, and it needs to be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with some of the records that we're going to be talking about now, or at least some of the stuff that we know is on the horizon for the next 12 to 18 months?
It's more of like inspiration for sure. I mean, I always feel inspired by other bands, and and a lot of these guys that you and I are friends with that are going to appear on this list too. And as people, I feel inspired by them as individuals to continue to push forward with everything. And my life in general, if I were to define it in one word, is pressure. So so it's not really I'm used to living in this pressure cooker of productivity, and just even my professional life is like pressure, and I'm used to that level of being motivated to do things, and even, the years of doing, martial arts and the years that I competed and things like that. It's like, it's more inspiration, and that rather than feeling pressure, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. I and this was my thought process today. I was like, this could be like for. I think there's kind of really three ways in which people would respond to this if they are keeping their ears to the ground. One is they become more competitive. They go like, we need to constantly up our game. The other is you start to think, shit, is my music good enough to live, to stand shoulder to shoulder with the stuff that's coming out. Or three, which I think is the healthier approach, you genuinely draw inspiration from it and you go, it's great to see these bands doing this. Maybe kind of churns, your gears creatively as well. And you start to go, well, I can incorporate this. I've always wanted to try this. Let me just do it. You almost kind of you feel emboldened to throw caution to the wind creatively on certain things that maybe you wouldn't have done previously, because you see other bands do it, at least following a similar principle and doing as well as they do.
Absolutely, and there's one specific gentleman that's going to be on this list that
I can guess who that is.
even outside of even outside of his musical output, I'm like, man, I feel like I gotta like get it together a little bit more, because of this guy. So we'll get to him at some point, I imagine.
All right, well let's get started. So we are going to start with your number 10.
My number 10 is Drugoth. Battles may cease, but war is forever. And this is a band that I've discovered through listening to your podcast, actually, and through Carl Hikara. I wasn't familiar with the work prior to this record, and it just became, pretty much like a staple of having it on, like when I'm doing things or driving, and the catchiness on this record, and sort of combined with the sort of rawness is really what grabbed me. And there's that's very specific drum beat that's like that in the practice space that we call it the scumbag drum beat, and it's pretty front and center on this record, which I think is great.
Well, I went on about a 6-minute monologue about the man on last week's show with Carl and with the Duke of Metal. So I don't want to toot his horn too much, but yeah, I agree with you. It was number 11 on my list. It could very easily have gone up higher. He's a dude who, as a guy, as a representative of the extreme music scene, the scene in Australia, one of the best people I've ever met. He's it's so satisfying as somebody who's known of him and followed his music for probably the last 4 or 5 years, to see him suddenly turn out a record like this. And like I said on last week's show, I was about 1.5 songs into that record, and I immediately sent Carl a message. I sent Nathan of Gutter Prince Cabal a message, and I was like, I think I've just listened to one of the best records of the year. And I cannot believe I knew this guy was talented. I didn't think he had this record in him, at least not at this stage of his career. And I think the exciting thing is, I reckon the response that Battles May Cease but War Is Forever has had, I think it's actually going to make him become even better, because you can already hear, like, he's the other project that he's doing, Shograth. I mean, he's busy. He does a lot of other stuff. He's got Christ Bane. He's in Spells of Torment and stuff. But this Shograth project that I premiered on last week's episode, fucking genius. I mean, it's got Hate Forest vibes, but Rugoth catchiness. It's absolutely brilliant. So I think this dude is just going to become better and better. And as a drummer, he is, as like I said last week, fast becoming one of my favorite drummers on the planet.
Yeah, I can't say enough good things about it, and I'm delving into all the other various projects that he has on the table, and I'm looking forward to absorbing all that material, to be honest.
All right, my number 10. Now this one, I think potentially people wouldn't have seen coming. I didn't see it coming either. I'm going to give a preamble here. So I know most people know it, but some folks might just discover this episode, listen to a couple of the news rants, and go, "What the fuck is he on?" There's been the odd news rant where people have taken real exception to stuff I've said. It seems like anytime you say bad things about Enslaved, there's always somebody who's sobbing about it. Like, I want to stress to people, when I do the news rant, I consciously have stayed away from Metal Storm and from everything else, and from the vast majority of the songs that I listen to, unless I'd say otherwise. For that specific point that I'm recording, I virtually never edit it. Every single thing you see there, my response is exactly my first response to seeing it. So the preamble is said because the number 10 pick that I've got is Whiteheart by Sladir, put out on Deborah Morty Records, and it met initially when it was announced in probably July, August time. The main gentleman responsible for Sladir, Joseph Deegan, had made some comments about the state of the modern black metal scene that I took umbrage to. I said that I wouldn't support his band out of principle. He sucks, blah, blah, blah. And I have to say, and the thing about it was, I admitted it at the time, I really liked the two previous records that they had done, The Futile Fires of Man and Deluge. When I heard Whiteheart for the first time, it was like, it's like a politician being paid a bribe. And I was like, fuck that. The guy can say whatever he wants. If you make music this good, you can literally do whatever your heart desires. And that's how I felt about that record. And it was one of those albums that the more I listened to, the more I started to feel like there is a point where if you are gonna talk shit and you are gonna say the genre is not to your taste anymore, then at least, and I think you and I spoke about this also, at least you have to do something that is genre defining, or is seems to want to push the genre forward, or is right up there with the very best. Then it almost becomes like an MMA fighter. If back in the day, he didn't really, but back in the day when Anderson Silva was Anderson Silva, if he was to talk shit, and after that beating that he gave Forrest Griffin, saying none of these guys can hang with me at whatsoever, no one would, people would go, he's a bit arrogant, but he kind of has a point. That is basically, maybe a slightly clumsy way of explaining my thoughts about this. Do you want to say black metal sucks? Okay, do it. I'm not gonna agree with you, but at the very least, I'm gonna give you some grace when you put out a record that is this good. I think the thing that I love so much about this record is not just the fact that it's, you know, it's got all of the tropes and the staples of black metal that I like. You know, it's fast, it's aggressive, it's atmospheric. But Joseph Deegan has a number of weapons in his arsenal, and he seems to always know when to deploy them. You know, the record starts off with this fucking cool, you know, like almost sort of primordial type singing, you know, and then it like kicks straight into the you know, the blasting and the violence. And again, they know exactly when to slow things down. They know exactly when to speed things up. The record is catchy. It's memorable. It is flawless black metal. And it's, you know, it's kind of part of that Deborah Morty Productions house sound, but you know, Sladeer to me, along with, you know, Oculus and a couple of other bands, are really kind of at the very top of their roster in terms of quality. Is it an album that you spend much time with?
Here and there, I listened to it. I didn't spend nearly as much time with it as I found out about it because you know, listened in the Necrosphere, you know, and it's just like it's awesome. I haven't spent not nearly enough time with it, and it definitely caught with me, but not to the point where I would put it on my top 10.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting. I think a couple of folks were just potentially put off by, you know, the comments that accompanied the announcement of the record. But like I said, from my perspective, I think I think the album is something that people shouldn't sleep on. I really do think it's absolutely sensational. So, all right. We progress on to number 9 on your list.
Number 9 is Make Them Beg for Death by Dying Fetus. And you know, what else can you say about Dying Fetus? It's like when I listen to this record, I feel hair growing on my knuckles, and I want to have like a mace and start smashing skulls, you know. And Dying Fetus, though they're from Baltimore, they're like an honorary tri-state band in my viewing. You know, that probably is meaningless to a lot of people what I'm about to say here, but that sound to me is like a New York, New Jersey kind of sound. And, you know, Maryland's not too far away, you know, and just like that thuggish, like brutal, those breakdown parts is what, you know, the slams are what get me, you know what I mean? That's like, there's a primordial part of my brain that just responds to that vibe where I just want to smash things. And I think I saw Dying Fetus twice last year. You know, they played at the Hell in the Harbor Festival, and then I saw them previous to that in Sayreville, New Jersey. And it blows my mind how many people love this band because of the name alone and the brutality of the uncompromising brutality of their music is. But yet they're gigantic, and it's awesome. I'm stoked.
And they that's the right word to describe them. I mean, they genuinely are uncompromising. I've been a fan of this band ever since I first heard Purification Through Violence, which I heard the year that it came out, which is 1996. And I remember the opening track, Blunt Force Trauma. You know, I had heard Suffocation, and I was into Suffocation, Morbid Angel, Cannibal Corpse, Deicide, and all of that sort of stuff. But I had never heard anything that was so full of just testosterone and bile as I had done up until the point that I heard Dying Fetus. And then, you know, I move on to Killing on Adrenaline, Destroy the Opposition, both absolutely extraordinary records. Stop at Nothing, you know, they had lost Jason Netherton by that point. You know, and you kind of start to wonder, okay, well, you know, is that going to change the dynamic of the band? Did they just didn't lose a step? You know, even the record of theirs that is worst reviewed, War of Attrition, I think is great. I think Descend into Depravity is good. And then for me, with Reign Supreme in 2012, they put out probably up until that point their best record. Wrong One to Fuck With had moments that I thought topped Reign Supreme, but Make Them Beg for Death is really a distilling of everything that they do exceptionally well. You know, from the fast, you know, brutal, you know, more, would say traditional death metal, but done in their style. Yeah. And then those breakdowns and those slams. I mean, every song on Make Them Beg for Death has that one moment where you just like that caveman inside you, you know, that real kind of primordial rage. It's like, it just awakens, and exactly as you say, it just makes you want to fuck something up.
I remember the first time I heard this record, it was it'd come out. It'd been out for a few days, and I was driving to band practice, and I got like maybe like a 40-minute drive to get down to the practice space. And I'm driving down the Jersey Turnpike, and like I noticed that I was doing like 90 miles an hour, and I was like, I got to slow down, man. I got to calm down. This record is like bringing out like this animal side.
No, dude, it's incredible. And again, all three men in the band, John Gallagher, Sean Beasley, Trey Williams, they are performing at the absolute peak of their powers. I mean, John sounds incredible. His guitar playing is fucking second to none. Sean, as he's foil in the band, vocally works extremely well. I would argue better than Jason Netherton. He's a great bassist. Trey Williams is a drummer, incredible. And I would also say, in terms of one of my favorite songs of the year, Undulating Carnage, without a doubt. That breakdown in that song, I've mentioned it for the last 2 episodes, is the hardest of the hard. It's fucking it's incredible. These guys are kind of like, they're like the Chuck Liddell of death metal. Chuck Liddell in his prime.
Oh yeah. When those slams come too, there's nothing surprising about the song either, which is awesome. It's like, all right, here it comes. Let me put my mouthpiece in, and it's like there's no surprises when those slams come,
But just also to the point around people that like them as much as they do. I mean, just the album cover for Make Them Beg for Death is about as rough as you can possibly put forward. I mean, you could accept a bunch of gore bands or real deep underground cult stuff. They will have record cover, or album art that looks like that. But for a band that, I think they've got something like 800,000 followers on Facebook. There was at one point talk of them being on the main stage at the Download Festival.
Yeah.
And they do nothing whatsoever to soften, compromise. They haven't changed. They've actually gone back from using the the Arial font for their logo to just the grim font. I love it. I love that they're so stubborn about sticking true to who they are.
That blows my mind. That I mean, there's no clean vocals. Like, they didn't start adding synthesizers or anything like that.
No,
it's
definitely not.
Great brutality,
All right. It may show up on my list, but we'll get to my number 9 first. So my number 9 is a record that was actually for a period of time very close to being my number 1. It is a band out of Iceland called Altari, and time has passed since I trained myself how to pronounce the name properly, but so I'm sure I'll mess it up. But I think it's Krofluldar is the name of the record. So the Altari gentleman was on the podcast, and we did a track-by-track breakdown of this record. It is the first thing that it reminded me of when I heard it. It came out, for those who want the reference, on April 14th. It was out on SWAT Records. The first thing that it reminded me of was the album by Ruins of Everast, Exuvia. It's not as big, it's not as heavy, but what it does have is that same kind of sense of experimentation and adventure. And I think from the very first song on the record, you start hearing influences, of Killing Joke, Interpol, Sonic Youth, but it is mixed in with this, very distinguishable Icelandic black metal sound, which wouldn't be out of place on a Mysteriuming record, or any number of great Icelandic black metal bands. For whatever reason, I feel like the record kind of came out. It sort of popped slightly. Angry Metal Guy gave them a really good review. I spoke about a lot in the podcast. People were interested, and then because I think just of the nature of last year, it kind of had its week, and then everyone just forgot about it. But it was one I went to many times over. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and of course, as a fun side note, the main man in Altari, his brother, is in the band Sunmara, who are very big name in Icelandic black metal.
I haven't even heard these guys. It sounds like awesome,
Oh, dude, it's right up your street. I've no doubt about it that you'd enjoy it.
I gotta explore this.
All right, your number 8.
All right, my number 8, Fires in the Fall by King Krigsgrav. And once again, a band that I heard on Into the Necrosphere, and I got into their entire catalog. And this record that came out last year, it really caught with me. And once again, it's a band that incorporates a lot of different vibes in their music, and I think that's what really I responded to on this. And it's something I listen to like weekly. It's in my regular rotation, this record. And you can hear the black metal influence. You know that these guys also are probably into maybe bands like ISIS and that sort of I hate that term, but I'm going to use it, like that post metal, post rock kind of vibe, but are still clearly a metal band, clearly a black metal band. And and then it's just something that crept up on me all year. And all their other records too are great. So yeah, that's number 8.
Well, that was one I was fortunate enough to premiere on the podcast as well.
Yeah.
So I was very chuffed when Jay from Krigsgrav approached me about it, and I'd been keeping an eye on the band for a while. When I first met Carl, for some bizarre reason, I thought that he was in Krigsgrav. So, and how you just get a load of messages randomly from people, and I think he might have shared some Krigsgrav stuff at the time. And I thought, oh, is this dude in Krigsgrav, and that's why he's getting in touch. But that aside, it was awesome to get to know Jay on the podcast. Made me like the album and the band even more. I totally agree with you. There's a lot more to them than just black metal, and that's kind of what makes them fun. I mean, I know Jay is a huge Typo Negative fan. As am I. So anytime someone is a fan of Typo or Carnivore, odds are we're probably going to get along. So, with you, it's a great record. Number 8 for me, Dying Fetus, Make Them Beg for Death. We don't need to go into that in detail again. So we will jump straight over to your number 7.
All right, number 7 for me is Cannibal Corpse's Chaos Horrific, and I am surprised. No one is surprised more than me that in 2023, Cannibal Corpse is making music and records that are hitting me the way that this record is. You know what I mean? It's like, I personally prefer George Fisher. I like his vocal style. He doesn't seem like a lazy vocalist. You know what I mean? And Barnes was great back in the day, but as you can tell from his most recent work, I think he's maybe
his day is done.
I think so, man. Exactly. I don't want to slam, him too much, but it's like, I really feel like the dude just like records vocals in his phone or something like that and sends like a voice notes to the studio, or it just, Fisher, on the other hand, total professional. I really respond to his vocal style. And one of my all-time favorite icons is in Cannibal Corpse. Of course, I'm talking about the great Eric Routan. And since he joined the band, I got to say, like, you can feel the energy that he's brought to Cannibal Corpse, and I think that their steps forward in songwriting can be largely attributed to him. And that's not to take away from the other members of the band, but just the chemistry adding. And I know he's been friends with those guys for decades, and he's worked with them before, and him joining the band has really pushed things forward. And there's parts, and I'm like, I know Eric wrote this part. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I remember hearing the first single of that record, "Summoned for Sacrifice." I think it was "Summoned for Sacrifice." Or actually, it may have been Bloodblind, but both of those songs, you can definitely hear a very strong Routan influence. Especially from latter day Hate Eternal days. And I agree with you. I don't really know what it is, whether his presence intimidates the other members into delivering better performances. I remember, kind of jokingly asking Alex Webster, like years back when I met him for Chronicles of Chaos, what is it like working with Eric Routan? And he says he's really tough. It's like, he doesn't abide by anything less than 100%. He will keep pushing you. He's a really tough dude to work with. I don't know whether he's like that as a fellow musician. And I mean, I think the dynamic probably changes, but maybe there's just a kind of subconscious level of respect there where, when the dude is in the room with you, you really give it your all because you don't want to seem to be falling behind. But you've worked with him as well, have you not?
Yeah, we made 2 records with him, and
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking. I hope. I mean, I would like to have made more, but just the pandemic got in the way of that. I imagine Eric and I will work together in the future at some point. But yeah, man, it changed my entire approach to playing. Actually, I thought like I knew what I was doing. Before I got into the studio with him, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I had to like between Savage Gold and the Grand Annihilation, I like reworked my entire approach to rehearsal and practice and individual practice and that sort of thing. Tuning is a big thing with Routan. He has this like magical ear where he can tell if your A string is out of tune when you're playing a chord and stuff like that. And I'm just like, damn, this dude is like, part of me is like, I remember just going over and over parts and just being like I'm this is not real, man. This is like I'm in some nightmare right now, But hey, the proof is in the results, and he's one of the best producers out there, and he's the guy I would trust with anything audio wise,
The way that he motivates you to kind of push through those valleys that like the one that you just described. What is his style? Like what is his approach? Because you never hear about bands, having a bust up with him in the studio and saying we're midway through the record, we don't want to work with this guy anymore. You would imagine that if he had a way about him, and I've only met him once, but he's struck me as an incredibly nice guy. You could imagine if he had a way where he maybe came across as too bossy or too pushy, that there would maybe be more of that. But I've never seen it, so I'm curious. I've always been, especially because his legend precedes him as much as it does. I've always been curious to understand what is he like, just in as somebody who's sitting behind the desk, watching you play, giving you direction. What is the dude like? What's the dynamic with him in the studio?
Well, first of all, he's like one of the greatest dudes ever. Just as a guy, you know what I mean? Like just as like another person in the world. Eric is like one of the most coolest dudes I ever met, nicest guy, like, very, very accommodating. Now, with that said, going into the studio with him, it's not for everyone, man. It's like a very, very inspiring wrestling coach is like what Eric reminds me of, where, and you could probably see it, like I remember being a kid where like I would be at wrestling and like, you can tell like some dudes aren't going to make it through the conditioning because they just don't have the heart to make it through. They don't show up again. They're gone. And then somehow these guys inspire you to find like that fifth gear inside yourself to kind of move forward and continue and maybe take a breath and like get back into like, what you're doing and stick with it and develop like heart, and that's kind of like what Eric is like, really. I mean, after the first day of tracking guitars with him, I was like, man, this feels like, like practice, from when I was these like traumatic experiences from like being a kid, and I'm like, but it's like either sink or swim, man. You got to you're here to do this job and, and you got to pull through. I can imagine some more gentle flower type people crumbling under the intensity of Eric Routan, but it's not for me. It's great. I appreciated that. And it's not like he's like denigrating you at all, but there's like this heaviness to the whole experience, and that's what I mean. If he knows what your limitations are and he pushes you maybe one step beyond that, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
I don't know that I would love to work with him again, just like I said, the pandemic sort of got in the way of us traveling down to Florida, but at some point in the future, I'm sure we talk about working together a lot, but yeah, I mean, it's once again, make sure you're prepared. That's the one thing I can say. If you're planning to work with this guy, make sure all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted and you got your shit together. Otherwise you're not going to make it,
So if you had to use the coaching analogy, would you say he's more like Ray Longo or more like Faraz Zahabi?
More like Ray Longo, I would say. Yeah. More like Ray Longo, definitely.
I like Ray. He's always a super entertaining guy. I like when he comes on John Anik and Kenny Florian's podcast as well. He's definitely a cool dude. I wonder, actually, as you were saying that, I was wondering whether did you respond to him as well as you did because you've been in that environment where a good coach, they have to be like that with you. I'm like that. I need someone shouting and yelling at me. Because it not because I'm lazy or because I'm undisciplined. It fires me up. I want that.
I think so. I think that having gone through things like that in my life, like having that background probably helped me just because, I'm realizing that it's okay. This is for the better of everything. This isn't personal. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like, you have to go in there with that approach. And, musicians are generally not, they're sensitive people, I guess, in some ways. And, I'm not saying that I'm not sensitive, but you can push me and I will respond to it in a way appropriately, but some people, I can imagine certain personality types not responding well to that sort of motivation,
Yeah.
And then go work with someone else. That's what I can say. But if you want to make an incredible record, if you're playing extreme music, you want the drums to sound incredible and heavy and have the right sort of like vibe, then you got to go with Eric. And also just to like his grasp of just the technological aspect of making extreme music too is he's like top guy in the field, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right, let's move on to my number 7. So my number 7, Johnny the Boy, you. I was blown away by this record when I heard it. I didn't know what to expect. I saw the name. I thought this sounds like some emo nonsense. Season of Mist had sent it to me. I basically ignored it for about 3-4 weeks just because of the name. And then one of the Legion sent me a message and was like, "Have you listened to this album yet?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Well, you really ought to. It's got a couple of folks from Crippled Black Phoenix, and I do quite like Crippled Black Phoenix's music, but it's not like that at all. It's like, imagine them doing black metal, but with like an Iron Monkey style sort of crunchiness crust to it as well." And again, it was one of those records where I listened to it, and by the middle of the first track, I just hooked. I just knew I was listening to something absolutely extraordinary. Now, you mentioned something on the last episode of Necromaniacs when you were talking about True Detective, and you were talking about Jodie Foster's co-star, as kind of being really on the nose, and that is something that really sticks in my craw an awful lot about the way that women are written, because I think sometimes in modern Hollywood, because to me, like a great female hero is someone like Sigourney Weaver in Aliens, or Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs, a woman who doesn't have to sacrifice her femininity, but can but is effective and tough and strong in her own way, right? So there's greater authenticity to me, or as far as I'm concerned, to that woman than there is in somebody that is trying to behave like a man. And I say that because I think what Belinda Cordick has achieved on Johnny the Boy is a vocal performance as a woman that is to me the high watermark of extreme metal performances by women. She's aggressive and angry in a way that is distinctly feminine. And then what she does so brilliantly over the course of the record is she gives away these moments of vulnerability that, again, I think is also distinctly feminine. And I say all of these things not to discriminate or to single her out as that bird. I think what she's done is like for lack of a better phrase, she's done a Sigourney Weaver. She's like the Ripley of extreme music. I really think like her contribution. I mean, I'd say across the board, right? If there were just a vocal performance of the year, she's in the top 3 without a doubt. It's incredible. And then it helps that she's got a band behind her that are so fucking capable and just gel with her so well. I mean, I know she and Justin Greaves, the Crippled Black Phoenix, and Johnny the Boy Main Man, they've got a very long standing working relationship, and they really kind of know each other and have a good chemistry. But man, this album completely took me by surprise. But the magic for me is in Belinda. I think she's fucking astounding. Every time I listen to that record, I'm just awe-inspired by how good she is.
Yeah, I'm actually a fan of her vocals. for all the reasons you mentioned too, because it's like, it's a distinctly feminine sort of performance, but it still has that, intensity. It's very intense, but it's not just like a woman trying to be like a male vocalist. It has the different subtleties that you would expect. And this record's cool. I just didn't, in the avalanche of other material that came out last year, it just was not something that I really spent a lot of time with, though.
Yeah, like I said, it was just one of those things that just got me. I don't know why. Sometimes an album, it's just timing, right? There's been albums like that I've heard, 2 years previously, didn't like it, and then one day it's playing, and it's just like, why did I avoid this? I think maybe Johnny the Boy is going to be like that for you, for other folks that didn't get into it. But I had skepticism, which was just completely wiped as soon as I heard it. And I think the magic in her voice is that it is authentically feminine. It's like she's not trying to be anything she's not. And the thing about it is when she dips into clean vocals, she's fantastic at that too. She can sing and she can kind of croon her way through a song, and she's incredible. Her clean stuff that she's done on Crippled Black Phoenix is second to none. But man, when she's pissed off on Johnny the Boy, there's I don't know the lyrics of by heart. There's a bit that sounds to me like on the opening track, Die Already. There's like she's got some line she sings, and then she goes, "Tough shit, you're gonna pay." It's just fucking brilliant, absolutely fucking genius. Anyway, all right, your number 6.
This is bound to happen. So at number 6, I think this is the inevitability of Eloah Burns Out by Trivax showing up on this top 10 list. So that this weighs in at number 6, and what I let's see where to start with this record, man. I mean, number 1, Cheyenne's a mutual friend of ours, and he's an incredible human. And this record, when I knew about this album, when I first, we have a new record. I was familiar with all the other Trivax material, but when I heard this, it was like, almost like a completely different. It was almost like the entire band and the sound was like taken apart and reassembled, and a new version of it, like a more advanced, evolved version of the band was what I heard. Like the songwriting, like the intention with the music, and everything felt like it was like injected with like steroids or something, and like improved and made more deliberate in a lot of ways. I guess deliberate and intention are the things that come to mind when I listen to this record, because it just the focus on the record is it's like different than the other material, And I had Cheyenne recently on Everything Went Black, and I was telling him, like, it's like what I responded to is the sick like intros. Like, I'm big on intros, and like there's like these really powerful intros to a lot of the songs, and that's the thing that always grabs me with like like music in general.
I like the sense of occasion that an intro can create. It's partly why I despise bands that soundcheck and immediately stop playing without that build up. There's nothing better than being in the audience and the lights go down, and then you hear the intro tape start playing, and it's like, okay, now that anticipation is building, and you can feel the energy in the audience is like coming up, because they know as soon as that band walks out on stage, whether it's Slayer, whether it's Dying Fetus, whoever it is, now things are really going to blow up. So let me try and unpack my thoughts as succinctly as I can. Cheyenne to me is somebody I've come to, as you say, I consider him a dear friend. Genuinely, like, I was just somebody that I reached out to him initially because I found his story really interesting, and I thought I was curious about a guy who had traveled from Iran to live in the UK and was making music, and I was interested in understanding what it was like being, a metal fan in a country where, that sort of thing is frowned upon, and how he was, how he'd adjusted to life over here and what he was doing. We just hit it off from the very first episode that he was on the podcast. We just started keeping in touch, and he drip fed me a couple of bits of Eloah Burns Out, and I said to him on multiple occasions, like, you're onto something incredibly special here. Like, this is something that is far beyond anything that you did on Sin. On Sin, it's a good record, but it's a record that I think is still very wrapped up in its influences. I think the interesting thing about Eloa Burns Out is it also is not shy about wearing its influences on its sleeve. If you listen to Alpha Predator, for example, there's a distinct, Deicide, early Deicide influence there. Cheyenne's love of dissection comes out on the album. His love of Watain comes out on the album. But what comes out louder than any other influence, any other, any other voice on the record is his own. And that's what makes this album so incredible to me, because, knowing him as I do, I've rarely heard a record where somebody's personality is almost like it almost becomes like a character on the record. Like I can hear him, I can hear the man I've come to know and proud to call a friend on every single song. And the incredible thing about it is I can kind of hear what I imagine the feelings are that he may have gone through over the course of the last, 10 years, or post moving from Iran, things that he might have experienced in his personal life. I mean, things that I know also he shared with me. Maybe that enriches some of the my thinking about the album. But I can hear these various different emotions, coming out on the record. It's a very if you listen to just the first two songs, you're going to go, okay, well, it's going to be a really fast, aggressive, black and death metal record, and it's actually anything but. You go into the other songs, there's so many, different ideas, like influences, different things that he's doing, and then it ends with this fucking incredible song. And I don't know how to. I'm just looking at the title now, and it's in Farsi. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce it. But that to me is really like that. That's the climax of the record. It's quite a cinematic record as well, in my opinion, because of that, because it's this journey that it takes you on. But I think the gist of why it's such a special album, in my opinion, is because of the fact that him as a person really comes screaming out, on the album. And I'm so excited about what the future holds for Drive X, because like I said last week, I can see this band having the potential to be, on a Watain level very easily. Like if they get the right person doing their PR, they get the right person, if they get the right building blocks in place, and some of it's going to be a bit of luck as well. I know that a couple of labels, were afraid to take them on, and they ultimately ended up with a much smaller label, and Cult Never Dies, which is no slight on them. It's just kind of explaining things as they are. But yeah, if things line up correctly, as frankly the band deserves, this band will be fucking huge, and deservedly so.
I totally agree with that. And like you touched on earlier, where Cheyenne's not just a story. Like it's real. Like like his story is interesting, but the music is equally as interesting to me. And as an aside, I hope someday that he writes a biography, because I would totally read that. You know what I mean? Like I would love to read his story, and in addition to the intensity of the music, I think that's there's something there for sure.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely extraordinary. And again, I just want to stress, because particularly in the next couple of my next couple of inclusions, there are a couple of folks here who I'm friends with. I'm harsher on friends bands than I am on other bands, because I'm in and I again, it's partly subconscious, partly knowingly so, but I don't want people to ever think that I'm endorsing a band just because a friend of mine is in it. I try and separate myself from that. It just so happens I'm fortunate enough through this podcast to have become friends with an extraordinary number of talented people. And at my number 6, three of the most talented men alive, in my opinion. Faustian, We Come as Angels. I've had this record for about a year and a half. I had it as soon as I finished doing it, and I think at one point they sort of slept on it, and with everything that was going on with werewolves and with everything else, I think Matt and the guys were, it wasn't a priority for them to get it out. I'm so fucking glad they did, because Jesus, it's a good record, and again, for something that is done as it's not an afterthought, but it's kind of done in the wake of all the other things they've got going on. To put out black metal that is on this tier, at this operating at this level, it's mind blowing to me. Like I've always mentioned this, but when it comes to the three guys in that band, and Matt in particular, I'm in awe of their ability to just keep cranking out like one incredible release after the other. I don't know how they do it.
Did their full length come out? I thought they only had a couple of tracks out of it.
No, the full length is out. It came out in
Oh,
December.
man. Man, that I have them mentioned, but because I didn't realize their LP was out. I must.
Yeah, the whole thing is out.
I slept on it, man. I got caught slipping on that one.
So it's only 7 tracks, but it is put out as a full length record, and it kind of, in terms of the styles that people will hear there, there's definitely some hints of Marduk, especially Panzer Division era Marduk. There's an El Nathrak, I can hear a lot of stuff like that. There's some Impaled Nazarene. You can hear it's Matt writing the riffs. But lest people think this is just kind of a werewolves with a little bit more black metal than normal, that's not quite the case. It's an album and a project of its own right. I'm fucking astounded that a label hasn't picked it up yet, because it's fantastic. Like I said, absolute elite tier black metal in my opinion.
So I'm at number 5 now, right? For me,
we are, yeah. So number 5 for you.
So now we're staying in the southern hemisphere of the planet Earth. We have werewolves. My enemies look and sound like me, which I'm sure is going to appear again. But what can you say about this band? I have a hard time believing that this is something that they just get together occasionally over the weekend and bang out records like of this quality and intensity. And it's technical, it's brutal. It's the songwriting is catchy on it. It's got incredible performances. And though I've never met any of these gentlemen, I feel like I know them through our mutual friend, Todd Stern, who plays in, it's Psychroptic, and he's, tight with all these guys. And then, just interactions online, and incredible. I don't know how likely it is for these guys to ever tour, but like, I would love to. I imagine a live performance by Werewolves is like incredible.
Mm. Well, we're talking, for anyone who doesn't know, and most people listening to this will, but we talk about the exact same guys that did the Faustian record I was just rapping on about a second ago. Yeah, I mean, My Enemies Look and Sound Like Me, the 4th album to be put out under the Werewolves banner, better than the preceding 3. All 3 of those were, top 20 records at the very least. From the Cave to the Grave, I think, was number 3 on my list as well last year when that came out. I shan't reveal any G14 classified information, but I have a hunch that album number 5 is fucking spectacular, possibly even better than My Enemies Look and Sound Like Me. But I mean, the album is crushing. It's absolutely crushing. And if I had to highlight something about this band, in addition to everything that I've already highlighted that I've not said on this episode because I have mentioned before, when it comes to death metal vocals, Sam Bean is, again, on a fucking tier all on his own. Like, he, to me, is one of the best death metal vocalists alive, partly because he understands how to use rhythm as a hook in what he does. And you can hear it over and over again on this album. Destroyer of Worlds, there's a part where he sings, "I cannot make it clearer that I am not a hero." And it reminds me, and I think the reason I gravitate towards it so much, his vocals, it's that the way that old school hip hop, like, Tim Dog, Eric B. and Rakim, those guys, their voice was the entire hook of the song. And he does that. So he's kind of adding an additional hook on top of the riffs and on top of Dave Haley's, frankly, fucking insane, inhuman drumming. So yeah, kudos to them. Just a fantastic record. Absolutely sensational album. And so far, 4 records in, a flawless discography. They have not put out one record that's not a 9 out of 10, in my opinion.
I also, Dave Haley, like, I can't fathom how many sick bands that guy plays in.
Yeah.
I mean? Like, that dude he's like single-handedly the sort of linchpin of like Australian death and black metal,
Well, he just kind of, it sort of just slipped out. That record that he put out last year called King.
Yeah.
I was like, holy fuck, man. Like bands work their entire careers to put out something like this. For you, it's just like, oh, well, there you go. He's in The Amenta, he's in Werewolves, he's in Psychroptic. I mean, it's just, it's mind-boggling. He to me, again, best of the best when it comes to drumming. All right, my number 5 is Trivax, Eloah Burns Out. So your number 4.
The Shining's latest record is something that I would say for the few months after it came out, it was something I could not stop listening to actually. And I don't know if you're big fan of this,
I am,
but it's once again we talk about the sort of bandwidth of black metal music and how there are many different styles incorporated into one thing. And you've mentioned this about Galdsveerd, about how there's some characteristic to it that defines it as black metal, yet a lot of it sounds not like black metal sonically, but there's a characteristic to it that puts it in that realm. And that's how I feel about Shining. And it's just hard to explain. It's like there are moments on that record where I feel like I'm listening to like the Swans or the Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, and then there's like some distinctly black metal parts to it, and the whole thing just adds up to this like dark, somber, depressive sort of vibe to the record, and it's something that really dug in when it came out for me.
Yeah. So this one made my honorable mentions. It was for a long time on my top 30 list, and it was just this year. It was just so difficult to try and get everything packed in that should be packed in. But I do absolutely love the record. I'm a big fan of this band. Literally from the very first records that they put out, all the way through to the record they put out in 2018, Varg Uten Flock. I think it's incredible. The two cover songs that they end that record off with, if you get the extended version, phenomenal. This one, I think what they did that made this record so land so well for me is I love the flow of the album. Everything from the opening track, the fact that those first three songs between them are nearly a half an hour long, and then they kind of lead into this peak of the album, the last song, with the Eric Satie piano track that they put in. And they're a band that kind of they operate to their own rules, and they move by the move to the beat of their own drum. And I really like and I respect that. And I know people are split on Niklas, and some people think he's a genius, some people think he's absolute scumbag. I will say this: one, the guy can write incredible music. Two, there are few frontmen more hilarious than that guy. So I'll tell you a story offline about what he did at Incineration Fest, which I'm so surprised he didn't get into trouble for, but it was fucking funny.
Yeah, this record, it's like you were saying, the sort of flow of it. That's why it reminds me of like a Swans record, later era. And also, it's almost like if you took Swans and like Mark Lanigan and made it black metal. You know what I mean? That's kind of like my feel for the band in general and this record specifically.
Okay. My number 4, Marduk, Memento Mori. A absolute return to form after a very disappointing Victoria. I have confirmed now my initial suspicion. I'm glad my suspicion was correct, frankly, but my initial suspicion that Daniel Roston, aka Mortus, was the man that wrote the vast majority of the record. Like I said last week, I think it should just become standard practice that he should be the man who writes all Marduk records going forward. There's nothing to be said about it beyond the fact that I am delighted that this band is back, in peak form. This is a record that harkens back to my favorite Marduk records, which are Romans 5:12, Wormwood being my all-time favorite Marduk album, and Serpent Sermon. It has tons of atmosphere. It's aggressive. It is Mortus, just in his absolute element, again, proving he's one of the very best black metal vocalists on the planet. My hope for this band is that when they play live, they just mix up the dynamics when they play live as well. Like you and Sheriff Scandado were talking about this on Necromaniacs, seeing them play live. I've no interest in watching a hour-long Marduk set where every single song is just blasts. It's fine for a couple of songs, but I like things to, I like variety. I like the dynamic of hearing the Blonde Beast and then hearing them do something else, and then hearing, to the Death's Head True. They've got so many great slower songs, like brooding, heavy, nasty songs, and they should use a lot more of those when they play live. So I do hope if and when I see them live, which hopefully is going to be this year, I want to hear things like Shovel Beat Scepter. Shovel Beat Scepter to me as well, just as a side note on Memento Mori, that to me is just captures everything great about Mortis, because he does all those things when he's on stage. He's like yelling at the audience. You've got that cool like ambient music droning on in the background. That song is like the closest I've heard to the magic for me of seeing Marduk play when they're at their best. That I think that they've ever recorded. But phenomenal record.
Well, that song's actually what I would, if I were to pick a definitive track on that record, it would be that song for those reasons, because it sounds like, Funeral Mist and Marduk sort of, an aggregate of like both of those efforts together,
Yeah. Yeah. No, magnificent. All right. We move on to your number 3.
All right. This one, I'm not sure. This is like debatable whether it's even metal, but they don't have a Metallum entry, but I consider these guys, it's a band called Funerals, and the record is Let the Earth Be Silent. And to me, it sounds like Connate, or that sort of Burning Witch kind of vibe, Evoken, that sort of thing. Maybe it's because not too many people know about this band, but like they're I forgot how I think Ralph turned me on to them. Ralph's always
they sound like a Ralph band.
Yeah, it's like aficionado of obscure stuff like this. And they actually reside in Leipzig, Germany. So maybe Ralph has seen them or knows them personally. But Let the Earth Be Silent came out around this time last year, in this very, very dark period of my life. And it would be like my nighttime soundtrack of just like, loneliness and depression. And it's like I said, it's like if you took like Evoken and had like female vocals, and very atmospheric, very dark. It's female vocals. If anyone hasn't heard this band, definitely go check them out. And Let the Earth Be Silent came out last year, and to this day I still listen to this record like pretty regularly. And it was the perfect record if you're standing looking into this dark abyss and wondering if you should just take a leap into the blackness of infinity. That's kind of my assessment of this record. So it's a very dark album, very it just, the vibe on it is like incredibly heavy. So check it out.
I saw a couple of people mention this. It's not a record I've spent a huge amount of time with, but I will change that for sure. Okay, my number 3 is Werewolves, My Enemies Look and Sound Like Me. I'm going to mix things up just a little bit in terms of the order in which we do this. So do you want to do your numbers 2 and 1, and then I'm going to do my numbers 2 and 1, and there's a very good reason I want to do that. It is because of how split I was on this decision. So you do your number 2 and your number 1, and then I'll do my numbers 2 and 1.
Okay, so my number 2 is 7 Crowns and 7 Seals by Sulfur Aeon, German band, German black and death metal band. Ralph definitely turned me on to these guys, and it's like I'm sure people know this record because it's incredible, and it's something that I listen to. And earlier we were talking about like how it's like, oh, man, I don't know if I could do something like this. It's like one of these records that makes you second guess like your own efforts sometimes. That's how I feel about this record. And it's like, it's almost like there's like a Fields of the Nephilim vibe at times. There's like death metal, like blackest, there's a Lovecraftian vibe to their songwriting. It just combines like so much of the things that I'm into. And great album. Definitely check these guys out. And my number 1 is Memento Mori by Marduk. And the minute this record came out, it became like the soundtrack to everything. Like I listened to this record constantly. It's long drives, kettlebell sessions, like that kind of thing. And we spent a lot of time talking about this record, I think, over the last
Well, I was just about to say, when you were reasonably quiet When I mentioned it, I knew. Okay, there we go. That's his number one. All right, so I'm gonna talk about two records, and then I'll give the order when I'm done. So my top two, like I said, most difficult decision I've made between two albums. I listened to these back to back while I was away in South Africa, probably easily 40, 50 times. And I inflicted it on Paige an awful lot as well, because I kept asking her opinion on stuff, and she's the least metal person on the face of the earth. So the two records in question, first one, RUIM, Black Royal Spiritism, and the second one, Primordial, How It Ends. So on one hand, you've got Blasphemer coming back with RUIM, the first real black metal thing that he had done since Ordo at KO. Ordo at KO being one of my favorite Mayhem records, and for me, this was a real spiritual successor to that album. Even as much as the little bits of kind of melody that he throws in at the end of the song Black Royal Spiritism, but like this album for me is black metal done on a level that is just if you think about any endeavor in the world, whether it's cooking, whether it's I don't know, MMA, whether it's playing a musical instrument, it doesn't really matter. When the true masters do it, you just sit back and kind of soak it all in, because it's astonishing to behold. And I felt like this about this album. Second I heard it, I knew I'm listening to something that is just, this is an album that's going to stay with me for the rest of my life. It'll be exactly like Exuvia or like Corazon or any of my favorite albums that I've mentioned before. Like this is like every single thing I love about black metal is rolled up into one album and presented in something that's very cohesive. Sounds extremely personal to this guy. On the other hand, you've got Primordial with How It Ends. And that album, to me, I've been a fan of Primordial for a very long time. As much as most folks in the Legion are fans of, very vocally fans of records like The Gathering Wilderness and To the Nameless Dead, I really gravitated towards Exile Amongst the Ruins. And Exile Amongst the Ruins, maybe because of the time that I really started to get into it, which was, it came out in 2018, but it was in 2020, COVID time, that I really started it really started to speak to me in a different way, particularly the title track, Exile Amongst the Ruins. So then How It Ends is an interesting one, because I think if you're a man of a certain age and you think about life in a certain way, then I think this album, you're bound to respond to this album in a slightly different way than you will others. Like this album in a bizarre kind of way for me, there's a rebellion to it. There's like a clenched fist, attitude towards it, but there's also a sadness and a melancholy to it that's different to the other stuff that Primordial has done. And again, it might be because I know Alan personally. I've had Alan on the podcast. We've spoken about it. He doesn't give a huge amount away, but you can tell it's there. This fear that the good things are going to come to an end. The good times at a in a meta global level is going to come to an end, but maybe that this could also be the end for the band. And there's kind of this mournfulness to the way that the music is projected, but then equally this hope that actually, things could still turn out okay. We just need to stay resilient. So like I said, I balance these two things out. Musically, there's just about nothing between them. There are moments on How It Ends that are fucking just astounding. We Shall Not Serve, All Against All, Victory Has 1,000 Fathers, Defeat Is an Orphan. Just phenomenal music. RUIM I've already mentioned. Lyrically, it has to come down to that. And I think because of how I respond to personally to How It Ends, or how much that record has spoken to me personally, RUIM is going to be my number 2 record of 2023. My favorite album of 2023 is How It Ends by Primordial. As I said, there's a hair between the two of them. It could have been either one or the other, but it just How It Ends, I think, is a very, very special record. And I think if this is the last record that Primordial is going to put out, then that was the one that they need to go out on.
Yeah, both are fine records. I actually have them in mentions. It just didn't, neither one. I mean, RUIM caught with me for a bit, and then I just moved on, you know, and it's incredible, but just the avalanche of other stuff that came out, I just, you know, there's a lot of stuff to listen to. And Primordial have always been a fine band. I've always been very, you know, in awe of the material that they put out. But I just didn't spend enough time with that record, it seems.
Yeah, it's, you know, just as far as music is concerned, it's Alan's greatest vocal performance I think that he's ever recorded. It's so emotional, so expressive. It's so powerful. You know, the album is just chock full of great riffs. So I would strongly suggest when you do have time, listen to it. It's very different to their other stuff in many ways. I mean, there's even a song that kind of has this almost kind of discordant Killing Joke style vibe to it, or All Against All that I mentioned before. But yeah, I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's a 10 out of 10 record, and it's a worthy entry into the Necrosphere Hall of Fame. So let's do honorable mentions real quick. What have you got on your list?
All right, so you know, I have a RUIM and Primordial on there. Also, the Bluthaus Nord Disharmonium, that was on my top 10, but that got usurped by some of these others. Sick, Cast Below to Rise Above. We've talked about them. Ken Mode Void, in another year, that might have been on, it probably would have been in the top 10. Godflesh Purge is in there. Now, there's a band, an independent band called Putrescension. They have a record, Forever Below, which is self-released sort of thing, but I think it was a great record. It came out.
I played that on the podcast as well.
Yeah, it features Justin Spaeth, drummer in Tombs. So, but that's not. I legitimately think it's a great record. You know.
Yeah.
And of course, Quell, All That Was and Never Will Be, also signifies an incredible step forward in Evan's creative abilities, and similar to Aloha Burns Out. I feel like Evan is turning a corner with the band. So that also made the honorable mentions for me.
So I'll again, nice segue into my honorable mentions, because Quell's on my list as well. I would say with one of the things I think would be very interesting with Quell is I would love to see what happens if Evan works with a producer, like a good producer. You know, someone that really knows the music, you know, understands what he's trying to achieve, but is there to kind of keep him or help him make sense of this. Not make sense, that's not the right word, but help him focus, help him sharpen this vision that he has for Quell, because I think it's a very good album. I almost think there's two bands going on there at some points. Like there's an extremely good death metal band in there, and there's a very, you know, interesting, unique, you know, and powerful black metal band going on there as well. And I think in some ways, I you know, I would almost say he should separate out the two and do some of the black metal stuff that he wants to do as Quell, and do something different as a death metal band, because his death metal vocals are great. B, yeah. Like that last single that they released, obviously I've now uncovered, it's one of the first songs he ever wrote, but it's fucking great. Like you could present that as a death metal band, and people would be very into it. But I really do think, I've said this to him too, I really do think he has a masterpiece in him. You know, that he, it's like he's a hair's breadth from unlocking it. And you know, again, there are peaks on that album that are just absolutely fantastic. Other honorable mentions for me, Venomous Concept, The Good Ship Lollipop. When I had Kevin Sharp on the podcast, he almost seemed to get defensive when I asked him about his clean singing style, and I was like, well, I'm asking because I think you sound fucking cool. Like, I love the vibe that you got in here. To me, it's like this is Venomous Concept's tribute to Kiss. It's like their tribute to stadium rock, and that's what makes it so great. Sadist, The Shadow Inside, that would absolutely have been on my top 30 if it had came out earlier. Totten Mess, Fiction Lust, just top tier Polish black metal. Hellfro, Tolgrof, top tier Icelandic black metal. Krigsgrav, Fires in the Fall, I mentioned that already. Yeah, I think those would kind of, and Shining, I mentioned that of course as well.
Yeah.
But those would wrap up my honorable mentions.
Yeah, it was just an incredible year, man. It seems like every year more and more excellent music seems to be coming out.
It's getting so difficult to keep up with it because Ken Mode is a good example. They were 18th on my list. They could conceivably been higher, but I only discovered them a couple of months after that record had come out, or discovered that record a couple of months after it had come out. And when I mean discover, I mean actually take the time to listen to it properly, because there was just so much other stuff going on at the time, and I was like, okay, well, I know what Null sounds like, so I'll put this on the back burner and listen to it. When I listened to it, I was like, holy fuck! Like I've been a fan of that band for a very long time, but to me it was like, okay, Jesse, as he has truly made his masterpiece on Void. Like, this is the best thing that Ken Mode has ever done, and I've been on board for everything they've done, whatever direction they've took. I love Success. I love Entrench. I thought Loved was great as well, but this is just something this is on a higher level. This is like serious leveling up.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I agree. It's just you almost have to concede now that there is no chance you could possibly keep up with everything. It's what makes these episodes and these conversations with your friends so much fun, is that you can actually talk about shit that maybe you've missed and you can go back to and listen now. But then at the same time, you look at 2024 and the release lineup is already so stacked. It's absurd.
Yeah, I mean, like any one of these records that you mentioned that I didn't spend time with could easily be my favorite album of the year too. It's like if I had actually turned left instead of turned right, that could have been a whole other thread of music that I could have followed, and that's the really beautiful thing about the state of things right now, is that there's so much great material out there.
Yeah. All right, well, brother, thank you so much for your time. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Next for us must almost certainly be, we spoke about it last year, but you, me, and Sheriff Scandado need to get on and do our crossover 666 countdown. Maybe like when you guys are back from playing with Profanatica, because when I mentioned it when we did the death metal countdown last time round, or the black metal countdown, did we do the black or death metal countdown last? I can't remember. But I thought, oh, this is going to be a piece of piss. I already know my number one band. And then I started going back into listening to a lot of that old stuff from the 80s and the early 90s, and I was like, Jesus, this is going to be harder to do than either the black or death metal stuff.
Yeah, I mean, because there's actually like hardcore bands that made crossover records that abandoned that and then went back to making hardcore. You know what I mean? Like there's like so many different strains to that. You know what I mean? And it's difficult.
I was immediately checking out Forbidden. I was checking out what else? It's like the older Death Angel stuff. Testament. Just there's so much good stuff that came out in that scene. And we spoke about Carnivore. SOD. People know my thoughts on that band. Any like they already almost have to be on the list just based on how great Kill Yourself is. So, but anyway, dude, take care of yourself. We'll be in touch obviously offline, but a pleasure having you on, and we'll do this one again same time next year.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, Jackie. Take care now.
Take care, brother. You just listened to We Shall Not Serve by Primordial, off the #1 album of 2023, according to yours truly, How It Ends, released on Metal Blade Records. Congratulations to Primordial. Congratulations to every band and every honorable mention on this year's list. And also a massive thank you to Mike Hill of Tombs, Scorpion Throne, Begotten Suns, my fellow horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse, for joining me on this odyssey, on the final leg of this odyssey. I am going to release, as promised, the Spotify playlist, so I'll post a link to that in the description to the podcast, and that'll have all of the bands that I included on my list. You can go and listen and check that out. Naturally, you don't want to stick around on Spotify for too long. Go over to Bandcamp and support these guys. They earn a pittance through Spotify, so if you spend $10 or however much on a Bandcamp download, you're probably helping them more than you're going to help them with about 50,000 listens of the same album. Now, as we start to move into the future, like I said earlier in the podcast, 2024 has gotten off to an absolutely flying start. 2023, I felt, was a little sluggish for those first couple of weeks, but there has not been the case with 2024. Let's start off with one of my probably favorite releases of this weekend, Veneration of Medieval Mysticism and Cosmological Violence, the new album by Inquisition. I am not here to talk about the rights and wrongs of listening to Inquisition's music. I happen to enjoy their music, and that is really all that matters to me. So I don't really give a fuck about anything other than that. Like I said, we're not here to discuss the virtues of finding their music enjoyable. What I do want to discuss is the fact that this is a massive improvement over 2020's Black Mass for a Mass Grave. That record was, I believe the scientific term for it would be utter bullshit. I loved Bloodshed Upon the Empyrean Altar Beyond the Celestial Zenith. That came out in 2016. For me, one of the best black metal albums maybe ever released. And on Black Mass for a Black Grave, it sounded... Oh, sorry, for a Mass Grave, I should say. It sounded like Dagon wanted to make an atmospheric melodic record, but in doing so, he basically took almost everything that was great about Inquisition in terms of energy, aggression, focus, violence, and he just made a record that sounded weak. There was nothing about Black Mass for a Mass Grave that, made you kind of have that real, beating heart, fist in the air, like, that confrontational element that black metal, in my opinion, has to have in order to be effective. It just kind of seemed to stay on this one tone, this one beat. It was very monotonous. In a weird way, they've actually done almost exactly the same thing on Veneration of Medieval Mysticism, the new record. At least as far as they've tried or attempted to make an atmospheric and melodic black metal record, but this time around, perhaps time in the no-friend zone has helped Dagon see the error of his creative ways, but they really pull it off this time. The songs are written in a far more thoughtful, far more dynamic way. I think, there's definitely a return of some of the power, some of the aggression of Bloodshed. It's not a wholesale return to that record sound at all. It's much more polished, much more focused on melody. But the way that melody is deployed on this particular record, including use of some really cool, really freaky sounding clean vocals, it's just that much more effective. There's a couple of dips here and there. I wouldn't say it's completely a return to form, but if you are a fan of Inquisition, I would certainly recommend that you give this album a listen. If, like me, you were ready to write them off after Black Mass for a Mass Grave. I keep saying Black Grave. It is absolutely leaps and bounds ahead of that. Still no patch on Bloodshed Upon the Empyrean Altar, but I think the ship has sailed for them doing anything like that record again. So, let's take what we can from that band and enjoy it. Another record that is well worth you taking note of, the Infernal Sea, Hell Fenlick. I've been looking forward to this ever since I heard the first single they released off of this, Bastard of the East. I did a reaction for that on the news rant, and I've been excited about this. album since I heard that song. The album does not disappoint, very much in the same vein. A nice step up from Negotium Crucis, which they put out in 2020. Still not a million miles away from, the semi-speedy black metal that they were making on that particular record, but I think the songs are better written, they're much more catchy, they're much more memorable, and it's just a good natural progression on, as far as I'm concerned, for that particular band. So the other album, also in the black metal genre, that you definitely need to take note of, Kalt Vindur, out of Poland, have released the follow-up to their excellent record, And Nothing is Endless. They put that out in 2020. Magna Mater is the name of the new album. It is 7 tracks of prime Polish black metal. It's darker, it's bleaker than the previous album, but I think it's actually a lot more focused and, maybe even a lot more dynamic. It's got a bit of doom elements thrown into it as well, which I think helps mix it up and helps make it more textured as a release. But really, really good stuff. And then finally, Vitriol have put out probably one of the most anticipated records of the year, not just by me, but by most people I know. And if I judge it by the response on the socials, a very big chunk of everybody that follows me on social media, the album is called Suffer and Become. It is the sequel to Bathe from the Throat of Cowardice. That came out back in 2019. To Bathe from the Throat of Cowardice was a non-stop fucking pummeling with a jackhammer to your skull. Suffer and Become is a lot more dynamic, a lot more varied. I described it on the Facebook group that I have with my bros from the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse as Hate Eternal, making sweet stanky love to ulcerate. And I stand by my description. It retains 95% of the brutality of its predecessor, but the songs on Suffer and Become are also much more melodic. There's a whiff of black metal thrown in. There's more melody. Carl Rasmussen still sounds just as fucking brutal and pissed off as he always had. And one thing that I will definitely highlight, this has got some of the finest guitar work that I have heard in a very long time. Now, folks will say, well, you haven't listened to XYZ technical death metal band. It's because I'm not necessarily a fan of technical death metal. This is very technical, but the crux of what they do is very much song orientated, and I think that's why I gravitate towards it. I will place early bets on this right now and say, I think Vitriol is going to become, or is going to be, one of the biggest records of 2024, without a shadow of a doubt. You can take it to the bank. Suffer and Become is going to be in the top 10 of 8 out of 10 metal publications, metal websites, metal podcasts that you follow. I have no doubt about that. And I am going to prove my point right now by playing a song off of that album. This is called The Isolating Lie of Learning Another. You just heard The Isolating Lie of Learning Another by Vitriol. The album is called Suffer and Become. It's out right now on Century Media. It is going to be a massive record this year, so if you haven't got on board the Vitriol train yet, then do yourself a favor and change that immediately. I'll post a link to their Bandcamp in the description to the podcast. And look out, because I've got Kyle Rasmussen on tap. I'm actually recording I'm recording this on a late Monday evening. I am going to be doing an interview with Kyle this coming Wednesday. So that's going to be on a future episode of Into the Necrosphere. Very excited to talk to him. He seems like a very interesting cat. His band is just absolutely fucking top tier. Right now, my friends, if you ever used the word goals as an adjective, it might be time for you to get to stepping, because this is the weekly news rant.
Round them up for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
All right, Legion. We kick off on metalstorm.net as we usually do. The best metal news website on the face of the earth. The first headline that's grabbing my attention: Dark Tranquillity upcoming album ready for mastering and streaming. Dark Tranquillity vocalist Michael Stan shared an update that he has finished recording and tracking vocals for their upcoming 13th album, consequently completing the whole recording process of the follow-up to 2020's Moment. The newly recorded material is now ready to be mixed and mastered by Jens Borgen. I will confess, in the interest of full disclosure, that I have the last Dark Tranquillity record that I spent any degree of time with, I think came out back in 1995. That was back when I was still finding my feet in the world of extreme music. I thought it then that Dark Tranquillity, much like In Flames, lacked the appropriate level of severity that I require to get excited about music. I still think it, with every passing track that I've listened to, and from time to time, occasionally something has popped up, like when I'm listening to a song on Spotify and the algorithm kicks in, and then, a recommendation comes up. Sometimes Dark Tranquillity is in that. I've just never grabbed me. You guys tell me if I'm wrong and if there's, an album that I should be paying particular attention to. But as things stand right now, that is just not a band that has really moved the needle for me in any way. Next up, we have news about Impure Wilhelmina. They've launched a music video for their track Nebulae. The song is part of their latest EP, Dead Decades. The clip was created by Julian Deals. The band comments about the new video. Hey, here's a new video for the track Nebulae, created by our longtime friend Julian Deals. Nebulae is an unreleased track from Antidote's recording session and was finally released last October on the Dead Decades EP. The track is about blazing clouds, volcanic eruptions, and the slow destruction of civilizations. It's a dark, apocalyptic, and threatening song. We're glad to give it new life today with a stunning video. Enjoy. I remember back when Antidote came out, I read a review on Angry Metal Guy, and they were describing Imperial Wilhelmina basically like the post-metal equivalent of The Cure and the Smiths. I kind of buy into that if you add in a little bit of Paradise Lost, and, you know, maybe with that screaming vocal, you know, you could kind of have some of those sort of black metal burgeoning on hardcore crust punk bands like This Gift is a Curse. But I don't hate that song, I'll tell you that much. I think Antidote is a record that I maybe slept on a little bit. When it came out back in 2021, I remember there were just so many other things coming out that were commanding my attention that I didn't necessarily give it the respect that it required. And I think I'm going to change that, inspired by this song. But let's get back to it. Yeah, might not make the top 30 of 2024. May very well not have made the top 30 of 2021 when Antidote came out, but I don't mind that at all. Like I said, I think I may have slept on Antidote a little bit. There's certainly enough in there that I'm interested in hearing what the rest sounds like. Okay, moving on. Cataclysm are presenting a new music video for the song Goliath. I will give that a skip. Thank you very much. Metal Days 2024 has announced that they are cancelling the festival this year. They're, of course, a festival that's based out of Slovenia. And if memory serves me correctly, they had some really good bands on the bill for this year. They had Paradise Lost, Emperor, Campfire, I think, had been confirmed, Borknagar had been confirmed. So, you know, there was some serious weight on that list. They say, yeah. Dear Metal Days community, it's with a mix of emotions that we share this news. Metal Days will not be held in 2024. Unfortunately, due to the challenges we've encountered, we've had to make the tough decision not to proceed with the festival this year. After extensive discussions, we have made the difficult decision to postpone Metal Days 2024 and instead shift our focus to Metal Days 2025, scheduled to take place from July the 27th to August the 2nd, 2025. While this decision was not made lightly, we believe it's the most reasonable and in the best interest of everyone involved. So if you had planned to go, you now have a free weekend. I just hope the bands in question haven't ended up taking a bath as a result. There's also news here about Behemoth, who are going to be touring European lands, it says here, this coming summer. And apparently they are going to be supported by Testament, Gairia, Sodom, and Anal Nathrak on selected dates. I also see Unto Others and Imperial Triumphant. On the topic of Anal Nathrak, I have responded to a message of introduction made by the great Sam Loyns to Dr. Dave of Anal Nathrak fame. Not heard back from him yet. So whether I will hear back from him is anybody's guess. It may very well be that he is not responding to me because, if we are completely honest, I was less than pragmatic about the quality of the last Anal Nathrak record. I do think, I'm vindicated by the fact that I was overwhelmingly positive about everything else in their back catalogue, but I didn't like that last album at all. And I still don't. I think it's terrible. I think it's a blight on the band's discography, quite frankly. But I would love to have Dr. Dave on the podcast. So if I can make that happen, Legion, it will happen. Death Angel are tracking new material. Bands are really busy this year. They do say, though, that they're going to put that out in 2025, which is probably just as well, because, again, same as with last year, you're coming into heavy traffic putting out anything this year, I think. Haunted signed record deal with Ripple Music. I very nearly got excited and thought they were referring to The Haunted, but apparently it's a stoner doom metal ensemble based out of Italy by the looks of things. So definitely not the same thing. Soulfly have begun writing next album. This one is cunningly entitled "Fuck All Your Politics, Fuck All Your Bullshit." Decapitated are co-headlining a North American tour with Septic Flesh in support. Might not be bad. We'll have Cataclysm and a Legion on as well. That last Decapitated album, that really, really flew under the radar as far as, anyone who's anyone, giving it any real attention. And I thought it was absolutely fucking awful. I'm trying to remind myself when it came out. I think it was 2022. But I mean, you barely hear anything about it anymore. And I just feel like my beef with that record was the fact that Decapitated were forging such an interesting path on the albums that they had put out prior to that. So I'm just going to remind myself of their names. I mean, I know my favorite Decapitated record is Carnival is Forever, without a shadow of a doubt. But I would say Organic Hallucinosis was excellent. The Negation was excellent. Nihility, fucking fantastic. Winds of Creation, excellent. Anti-Cult was starting to really lose the plot a little bit. It was like one of these albums that is ferociously heavy on the surface, but underneath the surface, it just doesn't convince. And Cancer Culture was even worse in that regard. Blood Mantra had its moments. But yeah, this band was, on a peak, on a, rising album over album. Carnival is Forever, I think, was their very best. Blood Mantra, slight step down, but, wasn't bad. Nothing to be ashamed about. Anti-Cult and Cancer Culture, absolute fucking trash. I don't know if time in prison, back when they had that woman accused them of wrongdoing in the tour bus. I don't know whether that affected them in any way, but you would think they would come out of jail, though, and be, more aggressive. Actually, I speak under correction. I don't actually know whether they went to jail, but either way, Decapitated are, for all intents and purposes, dead to me. One band who is not dead to me, as you would have picked up from my raving about the new album a couple of minutes ago, is Vitriol. They have got a ferocious new record, it says here, called Suffer and Become. I mentioned that previously. To celebrate the occasion, Oregon-based death metal operatives premiere an Alexander Bemis-directed music video for He Will Fight Savagely track. They warn us right from the outset of the track that you are about to witness real body modification, which was done under the supervision of professionals. Do not try this at home. Viewer discretion is advised. So if you're planning to start plunging those hooks into you, in tribute to the new Vitriol record, you might want to hold on to that thought. But I know what the song sounds like. I think most of you know what the song sounds like, but I do want to give this music video a quick look. So let's give it a spin. You can't help but go full stink face when you hear that. It is just fucking brilliant. This album, like I said earlier, is sensational. I'm going to be shocked if this is not number one on many, many lists this year. Like, the only thing that I would have suggested, if I were their manager, I would have said, hold off until like September before you release this. Just so that you kind of get into that. If end of year plaudits is what you care about, I should add. hold off until September and release it then. Make sure that it's front of mind when people are pulling those lists together, because I do think recency bias plays into it. You don't often see, a huge number of bands that put out stuff at the beginning of the year, get their names up on the lists. But yeah, man, this is just fucking brilliant. Side note, you couldn't pay me enough money to be suspended from hooks by my bare skin like these guys are doing here. I don't know whether that's something that they enjoy doing in their private life. I happen to actually know somebody who he runs a company who hosts like special body suspension days. I look at the photos and I just go, fuck that shit. You're not going to get, if it's, if that's what you like doing, so be it. You're not getting me anywhere near that psycho activity. But yeah, song-wise, this just absolutely cannot, under any circumstances, be faulted. This is perfect. Modern technical death metal with just that hint of sinister black metal bubbling away under the surface, and I fucking love it. In case it wasn't obvious previously. I'll tell you what, I like the music video too. I mean, even though I'm not necessarily down with body modification and the like, I think the music video just suits the song very, very well. And, again, at least we're not subjected to the trope of an old man running around in his underpants on the beach, like seemed to be the case for at least 60% of black and death metal music videos that were released between June of 2022 and probably June of 2023. Anyway, let's move on. Mean Streak have launched a new song. Mean Streak, a female metal band featuring partners and wives of current Dream Theater members, have revealed a new song called Giant Speaks. The latter is taken from their new EP Blood Moon, due out next month. The name alone has hints of the band, or the fictional band, Defiler, which some of you guys might remember from, I think it was season 1 of The Sopranos. It's a fucking brilliant episode, first and foremost. But yeah, there's like this really terrible fictitious hair metal band that Adriana and Chris Moltisanti, 2 characters from the show that they talk about. And as soon as I saw that name, Mean Streak, I immediately thought of Defiler. But anyway, my expectations on this one are extraordinarily low, yet I am going to give it a quick listen because I'm also very curious. I'll tell you what, that's actually not too bad. I mean, I'm not getting all giddy about it, but it's not terrible. Considering the name of the band, I was expecting something absolutely atrocious here, and sounds like they can play their instruments. which, probably shouldn't surprise anybody. I mean, I know being married to somebody who's a technical virtuoso isn't necessarily a guarantee of technical prowess yourself, but, there's something surely rubs off, when they're sitting practicing together, or, however they do their thing in those various households. Yeah, like I said, not bad, not terrible. At least it's not a joke. It's not Defiler. Okay, let's move on. By the way, speaking of virtuosos, I watched Killers of the Flower Moon last night, finally. And, I was talking to Paige as we were watching the film. There is something about watching a movie that has been made by a true master that is just different. It just hits differently, as the younger generations would say. And there is absolutely no doubt that when it comes to true masters, Martin Scorsese is the greatest master of them all. He has had so few missteps in his career, you can probably count them on one hand, like true missteps, absolute stinkers. Maybe Kundun, or I didn't particularly like that movie about the missionaries, even though I concede it was well made. But overall, it's been a pretty stellar career for old man Scorsese, but this film was just extraordinary. Incredibly well directed, beautifully shot. I watched it here at home on Apple TV, and I was just in awe of the cinematography, the framing of every single scene. Just phenomenal work, just a cut above the vast. And when I say vast majority, I mean 99% of what you see being put out by anybody else. It just completely mops the floor with it. The other thing that I should mention, as much as there's been a big fuss made about Lily Thompson, I think her surname is Thompson, the woman who plays Leonardo DiCaprio's wife in the film, I have to say, this movie, when it comes to acting, is all DiCaprio. He may be a insufferable fucking ass when it comes to him flying around in his private jet, swanning around in his private jet and telling us how we should live our lives. But when it comes to acting, holy shit, this guy he's on a fucking different level, especially in this movie. And again, it's been on a bit of a hot streak. You've got Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You've got The Revenant. Some of his recent fare has just been absolutely extraordinary. But I do think this might rival Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as maybe my favorite Leonardo DiCaprio performance. It is nuanced. He is channeling, and I might be reading too much into this, but he's channeling the Godfather, Marlon Brando, at least in the way that he kind of pulls his mouth throughout the film. But if you haven't seen Killers of the Flower Moon yet, I very, very strongly suggest that you check it out. Folks might think that the message is a bit on the nose. I don't really think so. I think they were quite even-handed with it. Is the best way that I could describe it. And, the fact of the matter is that, there was a lot of skullduggery in those days, and a lot of it was, perpetrated by conniving, lying white men. So that's just a matter of historical fact. Anyway, we move on to some more music. Crawl have announced a new album release. It says here, Swedish death metal crust band Crawl are set to release their much-awaited full-length album titled Altar of Disgust. If you've heard their split with label mates Feral last year, you know what to expect from them. Skull-splintering, punk-infused HM2 style death metal. Pre-orders for it will be coming on Friday, which I assume is this coming Friday, on February 2nd, all formats. Yes, I was correct. I should have read the whole sentence. You can listen to a brand new song, Undead Crypts, via YouTube Down Under.
Let your
This is nasty. It's filthy is what it is. And I can definitely see if you are somebody who listens to like an Everflowing Stream or Indecent and Obscene by Dismember on a weekly basis, maybe even a monthly basis, you are going to dig yourself some crawl. That is just, it's heavy. It's nothing particularly original. We've heard this style done many times before, including by a lot of newer bands that are kind of emulating that Swedish death metal style. But I mean, these guys come from Sweden. Maybe it's something in the water, but yeah, they don't lose a step. Yeah, this is fucking beastly so far. You know, you could also say that if the tragedy hadn't befallen LG Petrov, you could listen to that and go, close your eyes. Somebody could tell you, hey, that's the new Entombed, and you'd go, man, they've really put out something pretty special, yeah. And I mean that as a massive compliment. Very good stuff. Really, really good. This band, in case you want to go and dig into their back catalog, they put out a record back in 2018 called Rituals, which, may or may not be worth checking out. I can't pretend to be an expert on their discography, but I am definitely looking forward to hearing what the rest of that song sounds like, or the rest of that album, I should say. All right, let's check out another song. Fall of Serenity posts a new track, Darkness I Command, the third single from Fall of Serenity's upcoming record, Open Wide Oh Hell, has premiered online in the format of an official music video. The new music output is set to be released on March the 22nd. No idea what Fall of Serenity sounds like, but I'm about to find out. The song is okay. Just one comment. John Galhart, the vocalist for Fall of Serenity, I don't know whether it's just the angle that they're filming him at. Maybe it's the fact that it's in black and white, but he looks like the fucking spitting image of Jared Bridgman of Earthrot. Just an observation for those of you guys watching this on YouTube. Those of you guys listening to this probably don't give a shit, but he looks a lot like Jared Bridgman of Earthrot. I was happy to hear that it sounds as though Earthrot are doing some new music, by the way. And the other thing that I just want to mention about Earthrot, I might have shared the story before, but I don't often get bad, negative, overtly negative or trolling comments on YouTube or anywhere else for that matter. But about probably 18 months or so ago, this dude posted probably 9 or 10 comments under the Earthrot interview that I did, way back on, I think it was episode 30. Just going on about how big of a scumbag and a poser Jared Bridgman is, and fuck me for putting the band on, and this, that, and the other. yeah, I couldn't quite. I think I commented back on one, and I think the dude has since deleted his comment. But I just said, "Sounds like you need psychiatric help, my friend." It read like a man either massively, on the old Oxycontin, and has been let loose on his mom's internet. But yeah, I couldn't quite understand where the hate came from. Jared seemed like a perfectly nice guy when I had him on the podcast. But anyway, Beast have unleashed a new single called Colossus. Danish death metal slammers Beast have launched a Jacob Prinsloo directed and edited official video for Colossus, the newly released standalone single. Let's hear what it sounds like. Okay, I'm just going to say this. The only reason that we're going to listen to another minute of that song is because I quite like that Kerry King style clean guitar that has just sort of worked its way into the background. That is literally the only thing that this song is going for it so far. So let's hope they manage to turn it around inside of the next 60 seconds. This is kind of, I lump this in with Cataclysm. It's one of those bands that on the face of it is quite heavy. I mean, this is less heavy than Cataclysm, and it's a lot less dense musically than Cataclysm. But, what it boils down to is this. And I don't want to sound horrible. I don't want to say that, this kind of music has no place. I'm sure Beast will find its audience. But when there are bands bringing out records like Suffer and Become, as in the case of Vitriol, frankly, the last Werewolves records, frankly, all of the Werewolves records, Dying Fetus, it's just when death metal is in a golden age of creativity, quality, you really have to ask where does a band like Beast actually fit in? This is the sort of thing that back in 1994, when I first saw Death Is Just the Beginning, Volume 3, I might have been tempted to just give a skip and go, well, I've heard this kind of shit a million times before. That's 1994, my friends. It's it's not doing a lot for me. Maybe some of you differ, but in which case, feel free to let me know. But that song is it's not B or C tier, it's fucking Z tier. Okay, there is news about Black Braid. Apparently, Black Braid is working on a third studio record. Not even a half a year has passed since the release of Black Braid 2. And now, Black Braid's Shagashawa. I know I used to be able to pronounce his name correctly, but fuck it, I'm just carrying on. Broke the silence with the surprising news that he has recently begun with work on the follow-up, Black Braid 3. I'm surprised, because when he was on this podcast, he seemed to indicate that, he wasn't really going to do anything for quite some time, but That being said, maybe being shunned as a result of his drunken antics has him in a creative mood. He's mainly justified his lack of presence on social media due to recording of a new material for an upcoming release. His message is as follows. I realize it has been several weeks since I posted on this account, which is unusual for me. Rest assured the silence is temporary, but not necessary one. Or not unnecessary one, I think he meant to say. The solitude of winter has always been an integral part of my writing, and this year is no different. That being said, it should not surprise you that I've recently begun work on a third full-length album, Blackbraid 3. The details of this release are still largely unknown, and there is much work to be done in the coming months. Just know that my lack of social media presence during the writing process is a necessary one. As the winter wanes on, I will make more updates on the new album as the process progresses. And as always, thank you all for your endless support. I promise this is only the beginning. Curious to hear what that's going to sound like. I very much enjoyed Blackbraid 2, much more so than I enjoyed the first one. Still did not make my top 30 of 2023, but I think that's as much a commentary on how good some of the music has been that's come out this year, as much as it is also the fact that I think he has something. There's a couple of people that are like this, so he's not unique in this regard. I think he has an even better record than Blackbraid 2 in him somewhere, and I hope it comes out on Blackbraid 3, but we will find out. Now, speaking of brilliance, I was completely and utterly gobsmacked at the first Bruce Dickinson single, having already braced myself to hurl insults and be, just my general nasty self. When we stumbled across it last year in December on, I think it was my last news rant for the year. So now it says here that Bruce Dickinson has revealed a official video for his new song To Taste Another Piece of his forthcoming highly anticipated album, The Mandrake Project. Bruce Dickinson presents a Brian McFall directed video for Rain on the Graves single. Can lightning strike twice? That's probably the question to be asked here. That first song was fucking mind-blowing. Absolutely. As much as Beast is, Z tier, that is like A++ infinity tier. I'm very, very curious to hear what this sounds like. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Churchyard, I came across a man. He smiled and slowly beckoned me with a trembling hand. Did you come to gamble? Did you come to pray? What's the meaning of your business here on a stormy day? The raindrops spattered on the tomb from grey and leaden skies. Deny me once, deny me twice, don't look in my eyes.
So I asked the question, can lightning strike twice? Apparently not. It's not terrible, it's not great. I skipped past the opening piece of the video because there's kind of a long build up. They introduce Bruce as the preach or playing the role of the preacher. Quite high production values for a music video, but the song itself so far, there was a real punch and a pop to that previous song. It was catchy, it was dark, it was really, really cool, and this is just indulgent drivel so far as I'm concerned. I might be being harsh. I'm going to give it another 60 seconds, but this is a 2 out of 10 in my opinion at least.
But you came to be saved. truth that he had come to steal, to kneel before the poet, not the altar.
It's an interesting thought process that gets you to put this out as a second single after that first song. I mean, I don't know whether or not maybe they want to catch a wider audience, and so they went, look, the first song that we put out was, quite surprisingly heavy. Maybe some of the older gentlemen and older women who like Bruce Dickinson, like Iron Maiden, maybe they're not going to respond to it as well as they're going to respond to something like this. But this song might make sense in the grand scheme of the whole album. But as a standalone, this is not something that I can honestly admit that I will ever have any desire to want to listen to. Right, we move on. Vredehammer are premiering a new single for the song God Slayer. Black and death metal act Vredehammer present God Slayer, the advanced single and title track of their upcoming full-length offering. Additional details of the latter coming soon. I have loved the previous single they put out. I love the previous Vredehammer record, so very excited to hear this one. That is a perfect palate cleanser after the debacle that was Bruce Dickinson. Channeling, Emperor at their very best, which is Anthems of the Welcome of Dusk, Nine Equilibrium in the Nightside Eclipse style. Maybe less in the Nightside Eclipse and more newer Emperor. With some of their own modern flair put in there. It's definitely unmistakably Norwegian, and I love it. I think it's absolutely great. Great production as well. Great performances. Love the vocalist. I am very, very excited about what this record is going to sound like in its entirety. Top notch. That is the accolade that song very richly deserves. And once again, I will remind all of you to check out their record Viperous that they put out in 2020 if you haven't done it yet, because it is fucking sensational. Absolutely sensational. Made my top 20 of 2020 when I put it out. That was my first ever list that I did on Into the Necrosphere. Very, very richly deserve their spot on that list. There's a new Ministry track out as part of their oncoming Hopium for the Masses album, due out on March the 1st. Ministry offering listening another new single opening track called BDE. It's available for streaming together with an official music video directed by Devix Cell. Ministry, like many of the legacy bands that I like, or legacy, artists that I enjoy, it's one of those things where as much as a part of me knows that this is going to be a fucking load of crap, I will always hold out hope for that one song, I mean, I don't see Ministry doing another album that's great, but that one song that takes me back to hearing NWO, Just One Fix, So What, Burning Inside, songs like that for the first time. Because, man, like I've said before, I loved Ministry. I still do. Like, Ministry up to and including Filth Pig is fantastic. And I even have a lot of love and time for the Bush trilogy. Rio Grande Blood, maybe not quite as good as the others. Actually, no, Rio Grande Blood is excellent. Last Sucker, I should say. Not quite as good as the others. But Houses of Mole and Rio Grande Blood, great records. But after that, it is a fucking downward spiral that has not been helped by the fact that Al Jorgensen suffers from rampant, ravenous Trump derangement syndrome. Again, this isn't even a political conversation. I actually, this year, just going to scale back from political conversation unless a guest pushes the conversation in that direction. For the simple reason that, it's number one, it's very divisive. Number two, it's frankly, is it any of my business to be making a bunch of, political comments on this podcast? Sometimes I don't know. I think people have their minds made up about stuff. And they, no matter what you say, they're not necessarily going to change or, come to any different insights. I've been quite clear about my feelings on various things on here. Again, I'm reasonably centrist on a fair few things, which in modern society immediately makes me ultra MAGA. But be that as it may, what does annoy me is when somebody keeps beating the drum over and over and over again about a fucking political boogeyman that, quite frankly, just the data alone would suggest that there are far worse things going on right now in the current administration than anything that happened in the Trump administration. That's just my view. But anyway, I'm going to shut the fuck up and let's see if the song is actually any good.
So what was once forbidden becomes fringe, and what was fringe becomes mainstream.
This is a nightmare. This is a nightmare.
How timely, singing about incels. It's just like, it's like Al has somehow gotten a list of topics from the most woke person on the face of the earth, and that person has said, you should only sing about these things going forward. And by the way, these are our heroes: Greta Thunberg, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. They should feature prominently in all of your music. They're both the crazy nonsense that comes out of their mouth, as well as just samples of theirs. Just there has to be wall-to-wall Thunberg worship on all of your records. Like I said before, what a sad decline for a guy who really, in my view, represented free thinking for the longest time. But anyway, I think if you want free thinking nowadays, I would suggest you tune into Jimmy Dore. I think he's relatively balanced. I like Bill Maher. I think he's relatively balanced. Those two dudes. Bill Morris has a bit of TDS, but I think Jimmy Dore probably he's the guy that at least tries to take things at face value. Glenn Greenwald as well. I might not agree with every single thing that they say, but I find their YouTube channels to be informative, entertaining, and I don't feel like I'm being spun a yarn necessarily. Okay, I'm going to listen to one more song, then we'll head over to Blabbermouth. Skeletal Remains, who are due to feature on Into the Necrosphere at some point very soon. They have premiered a new single and video for the song To Conquer the Devout. It's out now and available for streaming via YouTube. The track is part of the band's upcoming long player, Fragments of the Ageless, due out on March the 8th. let's give it a spin. So I don't want to take away from any of the other musicians in this band, but I am going to make this comment. Chris Monroy, this band has, let me backtrack. This band has two extraordinary weapons in their arsenal. Number one is Chris Monroy, their vocalist, and number two is Pierce Williams, their drummer. Both of those guys are fucking just elite tier players, you know, in their respective fields. I mean, it helps that Chris Monroy knows his way around a guitar. Yeah, there's a distinct Cannibal Corpse influence in that main riff, and then it kind of kicks in. It's old school, but it has a fresh feel to it. Everything that I've heard off of this upcoming record so far has absolutely done it for me. It's, you know, I think this is going to be another one of those. This is going to be like, you know, they're going to be up there with Gatecreeper and, you know, these modern takes on old school death metal that just work really, really well. I love it, absolutely love it, and we're going to listen to another 60 seconds of it. Love that guitar solo as well. It's completely and utterly unhinged. It's, you know, that kind of swan dive to get us started, and then, you know, we've just got fucking craziness and carnage after that. These guys hit all the right beats, in my opinion, and like I said, if you like that, then prepare to be happy, because I believe I'm going to have at least a couple of members coming on into the Necrosphere very soon. So, all right, let's head over to Blabbermouth for a quick 6 minutes skim through the shite that they're reporting on here. Rob Zombie and Alice Cooper announced Summer 2024 Freaks on Parade tour with Ministry and Filter. Stay for Rob Zombie and Alice Cooper. Go stand outside and fucking slap your ham for Ministry and Filter. Zach Wilde announces inaugural Berserkers Festival with Cody Jinks and Black Label Society. Poison drummer Ricky Rocket earns Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 4th degree black belt. Not bad. Lamb of God drummer Art Cruz launches his first apparel collection. You have to feel like Chris Adler is looking on at this and going, like, what the fuck happened? I quit Lamb of God. I thought the band would fall apart. He's now in that other, you know, fucking atrocious MacGruber metal band that he's started. I can't even remember what the name is. But, I mean, that band is absolutely terrible. And as much as I didn't like the last Lamb of God record, at least they put out a couple of decent records with Art in the band. But, yeah, Art seems to be going from strength to strength, launching his own clothing, playing very decent drums on the Lamb of God records as well, I should add. Anthrax's Charlie Benante and Butcher Baby's Carla Harvey are officially engaged. Congratulations to them. Like I said, Charlie Benante, I'm pretty sure he won't mind me saying this, punching above his weight there. And he does seem like a very charming young man. So I'd say young man, seasoned gentleman is probably a better description. But they've been together for a while. They seem like a great couple. So I'm pleased for that, or pleased for them. Bon Jovi, Bruce Springsteen, Jelly Roll, and Diamano David, and more to perform at Person of the Year Gala honoring John Bon Jovi. I'll give that one a miss. Watch Testament, Mastodon, Sepultura, Overkill, Exodus members perform with Metal Allegiance at 10th anniversary concert. Let's check this one out, and then maybe let's wrap up with it. They perform on the tracks that have been recorded here: Blood and Thunder, which where they cover Mastodon. It probably helps that they got Troy from Mastodon up front doing vocals. They also cover Iron Maiden, Damage Incorporated, Kill the King, Hellraiser. I think I'm going to give Iron Maiden a quick listen.
Okay, let's have a go at it, huh? Are you ready? You know this one, right? You got it?
So just to put you guys in the picture, if you are not watching this on YouTube and you're listening on Spotify, you just heard the superior vocalist that Anthrax once upon a time boasted in their ranks, John Bush, absolutely rip it up on that first verse of Iron Maiden. He still sounds fucking fantastic. Beside him, he has got the hulking, legendary figure of Chuck Billy with him, so I'm curious to see whether Chuck is going to give us some vocals of his own. I love these Metal Allegiance concerts, when there's just a load of fucking top-tier, talented musicians getting together, covering some of the classics, and so far this sounds fucking excellent. And we just had Chuck Billy delivering a absolutely sensational performance. I note as well on the right side of the video, Dave Ellefson took time out of public masturbation to play some bass on the track. But yeah, fucking cool. I love it. And, story about John Bush and Anthrax, I think I may have mentioned this at some point, but, probably many episodes ago, so some of you will probably have either forgotten it or never heard it. The second time I think I saw them at the Anthrax at the London Astoria with John Bush, they finished up with dual covers of Whiplash by Metallica and Run for the Hills by Iron Maiden, and I swear to God, that building has been demolished in the years since that show. they probably did enough damage to the foundation with how that crowd popped when they started Whiplash, that when the actual demolition crew came in there, they probably didn't have a huge amount to do. With what that audience had done to the Astoria, the people just went fucking apeshit, and John Bush sounded top notch on both of those songs. First time I saw them, because both of the times I saw them, they finished off with covers as their encores. The second one the first time wasn't necessarily an encore, but they did bring the noise, and fuck me as well, absolutely incredible. While we're at it, let's hear what Damage Incorporated sounds like as well. Just because I'm curious now, and so far it's been a very firm thumbs up for the Metal Allegiance cover of Iron Maiden. I'm going to skip ahead a bit because I want to hear the vocals. We've got Chuck Billy on deck again for this one. Timing was a little off there at one point in the song, but I mean, I don't know how much rehearsal actually goes into one of these Metal Allegiance concerts, so we'll give them a pass on this one. And Billy still sounds like a fucking absolute badass. That's recorded with a mobile phone, of course, so it's going to highlight all of the imperfections, but I'm not complaining about that whatsoever. That is great. I would have loved to have been there. My friends, that wraps up the news rant for this week. And of course, it also means that we've come to that sad point in the show when we have to say goodbye until next week, depending, of course, on when you listen to this. But you have Everything Went Black coming up tomorrow. You've got Necromaniacs on Thursday. Also Thursday and Sunday, you've got Soul Knox. And then at some point this week, you could almost bet your sweet ass you will have another episode of Iblis Manifestations. I just want to say thank you once again to Mike Hill for coming on the podcast. Thank you to all of you, the Legion, for checking out the show, for all of the support that you show this podcast week in and week out. We are going to look back at 2023 one last time by playing a song by the band who was narrowly pipped to the number one spot on my top 30 of 2023. The band, of course, RUIM. This is the title track of their fantastic record, Black Royal Spiritism. I am going to bid all of you a fond farewell with my usual sign off. Wherever it is that you are, whatever it is that you're doing, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.